Hello, Professor Henry. So I'm going to go over uh, my final project here. So I will do this in two parts. The first part will all be the first page, and then the second part will all be the bottom page. So I will go ahead and do the first part here. So main menu exists, and buttons for options, start, game, and quit game are functional. So as you can see here, I have a main menu with three buttons: a start game, options menu, and a quit game. And all that's done through in the canvas in my inspector here with a main menu game object, and then I have all of the buttons down below with the title for the game. So if I go ahead and click play, quit game works here. You can see it's highlighting. That will only work when the player will quit the game in a build state of this game. If I go to options, it will go into the options menu. And that works. And then if I click start game, I will go ahead and load into the level. So that is that one. Options menu exists, and selections for SFX volume, music volume, 1-2 player, and map of the day, random map are available. So if I go into my options menu here, when I click start, you can see that I can select in my options menu my music volume, my game volume, and then map of the day, random map, 2-player mode. All of that is selectable and you can interact with. If I go ahead and click back, it'll go back to the main menu. I can adjust these values if I want. So that is that one. Map generated from instantiating tiles and options settings of map of the day / random map is functional. So in terms of my UI, I was only really able to get one of them working. I haven't been able to figure out how to do both, but you can go ahead and load one or the other. But to showcase that, I'll go into my actual game scene here through my map generation. So right now I just have it with the two bools, map of the day or random map, where if one of them is selected true, it will load one of them. So if I click random map here, it will instantiate those tiles and create a grid. So as you can see, I have a 3x3 grid there. That's random for a seed. And then if I do map of the day, as you can see, it's going off of the day, which is 2052, and it will do the same map every time. As you can see, it had two squares. Now as you can see, map of the day is showing the same amount. If I go to random map, it will load in a different number for a seed, and the map will be different as well. But yeah, I was only able to get only one of them working. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite get how to do both of them. But yeah, it was unfortunate that I wasn't able to do it. But to go ahead and showcase that as to why it's instantiating those tiles, I will go ahead and open up the script. So in my script here, I have it set to where there's a generate grid function, and then if I want to create the random grid, it will go off the map seed here, where if I just set it to date.timenow, it will generate just a random seed based on that button click, and then it will generate that grid. But if I do map of the day, it will go off of not only the generate grid, but it'll go off the date. So it will generate that map seed of the value I enter through the date. And then by calling that in my start function, if random map equals true, do random grid. If map of the day equals true, do map of the day. So that's how I did the instantiate grid functions. map size adjustable by designers and at least 3 source tiles exist. So within my room tile template, I have a cube room, a room, and then a wall room. All of them each have their own separate things within them. You know, wall room's got walls, room is just a plain room, cube room has some cubes in it, and then I have it in my map generation script here where I have an array of how many prefabs I can do for the room, so preset tiles. So right now I just have 3, and then I can enter in those 3 prefabs there, and then it will generate a grid based off of these 3 prefabs. And then I can set how many rows of prefabs I want. So I can do 4 rows, 4 columns, and then it will generate a map with 4 rows and 4 columns. I can also set the width and the height of the room and width. So it will create the height in the room, but I like to have it set to 50 because those are set there for it. And then I can adjust the seed of the map if I want to map the day. So, you know, here's a different map, you know, seed 2. It will stay the same. AI and player spawn not present at level load. So I have a player spawner here with the prefabs for the tanks to spawn in. And then I have spawn point group here, so that way it will reference off of the spawn point that I have, and it will spawn at one of these 2 spots. So in my script here I have an array for the spawn points, and then I have the game objects for the tank to reference from, and then I have the game object random SP, which will store in the spawn points and the size. And then I have it set to where it will instantiate a player in one of those spawn points that through random.transform.position. Quaternion identity. So that is how that works. Same with the enemy script here. It is very much similar with the spawners. Same thing, enemy spawn points. So it can be set by how many points I have in there, and then I also have an array for the enemy tanks to spawn in. So if I can choose how many tanks I want to spawn in an area, I can do 1 tank or 2 tanks, and then I have that similar setup with the player where I store you know, all of the enemy tank prefabs, and then I will also instantiate the spawn points with a length here, and then it will create the tank within those spawn points. So I have the player spawn point here in the inspector. Because of the issues with having it in each room, but for the enemy tanks here I have it set to where it will spawn in the room here, and as you can see both my spawn points are on 2 different ends, so it will spawn at one of these points. And I'll go ahead and showcase the player and AI spawning. As you can see, I spawn in one of the maps, and then same with the player, or second player, it will spawn in as well, and my AI will spawn in as well here as soon as I can showcase it. I will go ahead and showcase it in the main one here. Why? There it goes. Looks like I'm gonna have to hold it to get there. So as you can see, I have no player tanks in here, and no enemy tanks. So I have the enemy spawner and then the player spawner, and this will go ahead and spawn in both of them as soon as the level loads. So as you can see, my enemy spawned, and then my player spawned along with it. 2-player mode utilizes different controls for each player, and split screen and key player data, score lives tracked for each player. So I do have the 2-player mode working, where it will show a split screen and then it will utilize different controls. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the score and lives tracked for each player working correctly. It only works for single player mode. So I'll go ahead and showcase that in the inspector, and then I will go over it in code. So as you can see, my first player here is being controlled by WASD, and then my second player here will be controlled by IJKL. And as you can see, they're both moving at separate times in the screen. And then I have on the side here player lives for my first player. If I go ahead and die to this tank, if it'll shoot me, there it goes, and then just lose one more. As you can see, my player lives drop to 2. And then if I destroy this tank, as you can see, my score went up from 0 to 4, and I actually reached a high score, or a new high score in the game. But if I do the second player and die, it will lose a life, as you saw, but it won't, reinstantiate and create another life, and it'll just go into the game over screen. So I did get it to work for single player, and 2-player will utilize different controls, and the split screen cameras will work. But to showcase the controls for the input for player, as you can see, I have a enum for WASD, and it's set for player 1. And then I have the player 2 down here, so that way if it wants to use this key code press, it can use this set of key commands done through input. And all that's done in my tank prefab here, where if the tank and input controller wants to select, WASD, it can select that, or if it wants to select IJKL, it can. So it does work 3/4 of the way, I'd say, except for 2-player. Not quite yet. It's getting there. But yeah, pickup spawn are able to be picked up by players and AIs and respawn after a set time. So I do have a spawn pickup here where it will spawn in a set amount of pickups. So I have it done through pretty much like my player spawn points. It is done through a pickup spawn point where I have it set to where I can click the size of the prefabs. So I have a health pickup, a speed boost pickup, a fire rate pickup, and then it will spawn in the spawned pickup, and then it will create the pickup sound, which I am not quite sure why that sound is not on there. That's a bit odd to me. I'll go ahead and fix that real quick. And then I also have it set to a spawn delay, so that way it'll spawn in every 5 seconds. So I will go ahead and have my player pick it up here. So as you can see, it's spawned in, and the player will pick up and it will interact with the player. So to showcase this, as you can see, my projectile speed increased, and it is a permanent upgrade. So if you see that the enemy tank picks it up, it also picks up and it will be affected to where it will interact with it. And I have that done through tank objects with a fire rate pickup, a health pickup, and then a speed boost pickup, where the speed boost pickup will increase the speed of the tank for a duration of 5 seconds. The health pickup will increase the health of the tank for 2 seconds. And then the fire rate is a permanent upgrade where it will increase the fire rate by 2. And all of this is done in sorry, through code in my pickup script here. So I have, the random prefab spawn for my pickups, and then a spawn timer, so that way it will delay the spawn time of the pickup. And then, if the player or tank picks up the pickup, it will add to it, and then it will, affect the tank in some way or the other. If it's a permanent pickup, it will be permanent to the player. And then if it is just a temporary pickup by a duration, then it will only be on there temporarily. Power-ups affect players and AIs. It could be set to expire after X seconds or permanent stat change. So I kind of just went over that, but I will go in a little bit more in depth. So in my health pickup here, I have it set to where health modifier will affect the tank, and it will only last for 2 seconds. But if I go to my fire rate here, it will increase the fire rate by 2, and it is a permanent pickup. So if I go to my tank prefab here, as you can see, my projectile speed is 100. If I pick up that fire rate pickup, it will permanently be upgraded to 102. And then if I pick up the speed pickup, it will go to 11. So if I go to my tank here, as you can see, I have 100 projectile speed. But as you can see, when I pick that pickup up, it switched it to 102. And then now my AI tank will also be affected to where its firing rate will be, 102. And as you can see, its speed is increased by 5 seconds for a duration of a few seconds. And then health as well increased. So those are the stat changes, and they spawn in after a set time with the spawn delay of 5. So the last one, game includes at least 4 AI tanks that correctly utilize state machine logic. So I have 4 scripts here with the overall state management script for the tanks. So I will go ahead and temporarily disable my enemy spawner, and I will go over the tanks individually. So the first tank is the attacker tank, which utilizes a chase state functionality script here, and is in the chase state, and then there is a flee state. So I will go ahead and showcase this in script. So I have the states here, the chase state and the flee state. If it's in the chase state, it will avoid the obstacles that it encounters, and then it will chase the player around. If it reaches half health, if I shoot at it, it will then change states into the flee state, and then it will avoid the player while avoiding obstacles. So I will go ahead and showcase this tank. So as you can see, it's chasing me if I'm in its viewpoint, and then if I shoot it, it is now running away from me because I reduced its health to half health. And if I go into the state here, you can see it switched to the flee state. So that is the attacker tank there. The second tank is the patroller tank, where that tank is designed to be in a patrol state where it will go based off of waypoints done through my state manager. I have a waypoint selection here where I can set how many waypoints I want the tank to follow. So as you can see, there's a patrol state here where I have it in my script for a patrol state. I have the state here, patrol, and then I have it set to where it will rotate towards the waypoints, and then it will check, if it's in the current waypoint. If so, turn to the next one, move forward. And then if we are close to the waypoint, it will then go to the next one. and that's if it's in the patrol state. It will then advance to the next waypoint if it's still in range. If it is done with all those waypoints, it will then go back to the remaining waypoint that it started at, which is 0, and then it will also avoid the obstacles to reach its next waypoint. So I will showcase the patrol tank. So as you can see, it is heading towards the patrol points here in my script. So it's turning to game object 2, and then it will go back to the third object, and then as you can see, it's just rotating towards each one. So that is my patrol tank. The third tank is the flee tank here with the flee state script, where if it's set to where if it can see the player, it will flee from him. And how I have that set up is the flee can see state, and then if it's can see the player in this state, first it will avoid the obstacles that it encounters, and then if it can see the player, it will then flee from him, causing the player tank to chase after this tank. So as you can see, this tank will not move unless it sees me, so once I get into the range of it, it will start to flee from me. As you can see, it's trying to do all it can to avoid me, getting away from me. So that is the flee tank. And then my last tank is the can hear ya tank. With this tank is in the hear state mode. If it hears me, it will chase after me. So I have that set in the sight state script here. Same setup in each of these state scripts, except for my update function. If it's in the state here, if it can, oops, didn't mean to do that. If it can hear the player, do chase the player while avoiding obstacles. So as you can see, there is my can you hear tank. And then if I get in range of it, as you can see, it's not moving, but as soon as I get in the hearing rate, it will chase after me. If it lands back on the ground, that is. But as you can see, if it hears me, it will chase after me. So those are the 4 different AI tanks that I chose that utilize the state machine logic. To showcase my state manager script, this is holding all of my functions for each of these states that do hear, do chase, can hear, can see, etc. So I have a do chase function, do flee, can move, and then my avoidance functionality to avoid obstacles. The can see script here, and the can hear script for when it hears the player, and then it will find that player up through the script here I did, where it'll find the object of find player. If the tanks find the player with the tag player, it will then target it. So those are my 4 AI tanks that utilize state machine logic. So that is part 1 here that I wanted to showcase to you of the game. I will kind of quickly go back over the SFX volume here in the main menu through my options. So with my options menu here, sometimes I do not like the inspector with the Unity, but anyway, so I have the 2 sliders here with settings here in the canvas with a settings menu script where I can adjust the audio. So I can this lets me set the game audio to a value, and then same with my music audio. So I have that all through audio mixers here, where as you can see, it's not playing, but if I click play, you can see that my music is playing, but if I adjust the slider, it will go to 0 and you can't hear the music. If I go to game audio, you can see, because I'm not playing in the game, it will not react, but if I click the button or adjust the slider, it will react based on that. So that is my volume controls there. So that is all I want to showcase to you for part 1 of this video, showcasing all of this here. Part 2 will be up shortly, showcasing all of the stuff at the bottom.